All right, everyone, it's time to talk about approval polling because normally single polls don't matter, don't even pay any attention to them. But if you aggregate polls, you can generally get a rough reading of reality. That is, if you take a shotgun and fire it at a piece of plywood, you're going to see little specks all over the plywood, but somewhere there's a fairly obvious center, which is roughly where you were aiming. That's the way it is with polling. Now, the more polls, the better. In recent polls, over the last half dozen polls or so that we've had in the last few weeks, Trump's approval, his aggregated approval, not a single poll, but the aggregate of polls, which is always going to be more accurate, has him now above 45% for the first time since April of 2017. That is that the long-term holding back of his approval was partially based on the Mueller probe. What's happened is that the Mueller probe cleared him and his inner circle of any wrongdoing. At this point, I think most Americans, not Democrat partisans or people that are liberal, the never-Trumpers or whatever, but most other Americans, the majority of people have lost sort of faith, I think, in the Mueller, Russia bullshit. They're starting to see the light, which is that it was always a bunch of crap, basically. Now, what's happened, though, is that Schiff and the other House members refused to let the issue go. Instead of trying to be a normal political party, have a platform, try to coalesce around a leader or two, have sort of a charismatic movement, instead of trying to reform their own party and do something positive, the Democrats have decided to just wallow in the mud like a sow at this point, be disgusting, be underhanded and sleazy, basically. The Democrats have reverted to the party of Bill Clinton, essentially, in the strategic sense. It's not working for them. Most Americans, I think, are turned off by that message, because it's funny. Here's the problem. The Democrats in 2016 and through 2017 especially, their thing was Trump is mean, Trump is a negative, sort of divisive character. But they're being mean, divisive, and spiteful, and they don't even have a platform. Trump's is clear. His platform is manifold. Here's Trump's platform. I want to stymie illegal immigration. I want to keep the taxes lower and renegotiate trade deals, do some diplomatic shit. And that's pretty much it. It's a fairly straightforward three-plank platform. I guess you could tack on get rid of the ACA, but that's now going to go before SCOTUS, so we'll see. That's his platform. And no new gun control, stuff like that. The Democrats, what's their platform? Orange man bad. Can you think of any specific proposals by any of the Democratic candidates other than that? You can probably think of a couple. The Green New Deal, which landed like a thud, that's been embraced by Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. There's a reason they're in the single digits or thereabouts. Bernie Sanders has a platform. The problem is if you actually look into the platform, it's a bunch of bullshit. If you look into Bernie Sanders' platform, it basically means a massive tax hike for all Americans in order to stave off increased debt spending. Or it would be increased debt spending. So yeah, you can get your socialism, but you're not going to be able to pay for it very easily. It'd be very painful for the vast majority of Americans. I wonder if people in the working class who say, oh, Bernie's going to give me free shit, I wonder if you realize that once your taxes go up, that's going to offset any benefit you got. You have to be literally destitute in order to derive anything from Bernie Sanders' particular proposal for free healthcare, which isn't free. If you're in the lower middle class, you're going to get hammered. If you're like me and you're in the solid middle class at this point, yeah, I'd have to pay like twice as much as I already pay, plus I'd be paying 50% probably. Fuck you, Bernie, you're not getting that sort of money because you're never going to sit in the White House, thankfully. Joe Biden's platform is just angrily ranting at Donald Trump. What's happening is that Trump's approval is topping out higher. It's approaching the highest level it ever was at, which was like 46%. Right after he's inaugurated for a few weeks, he was like at 46, 47 or something. That's as high as he's ever been. His approval right now is almost as high as then. He's running against the Democrats at large because they're still an amorphous blob of policy-free bullshit. That's basically what it is. He's being compared to the Democrats in general favorably. One part of this is that most people saved on their taxes. They can say that the tax bill was unpopular. Tax reform was unpopular because the Democrats managed to convince a bunch of Americans that they would pay more, which is a bunch of bullshit. Now that they realize that they didn't, I think some of them are waking up to the sad reality that the Democrats hoodwinked them. Then you think of some other things that are happening right now. We do have movement on the China trade deal. Trump saying basically, oh, 200 billion in new tariffs on China because they're, breaching our agreements. And China's having a nervous breakdown right now, and so negotiations are even more fervent than they were before. That's funny. I'll be doing a separate video today. Even CNN is blinking on the issue and saying, well, China has been totally blindsided. Trump has just fucked them in the ass royally. They're scrambling right now. We have the upper hand, which is like, what do you fucking think? We're the buyer. They're the seller. We have the upper hand in negotiations. They need us. We do not fundamentally need anything that China gives us. We can get it from India or Thailand or Mexico very, very easily at not much more price. It would be very easy for us to cut all trade ties to China and leave their economy in a depression. Jinping thinks that he has the ability to negotiate. He's not be able to negotiate with someone like Trump. And I think that he's right, by the way, when he says that they're trying to stall out the trade talks to have a deal after 2020 because they're assuming that they'll be dealing with a Democrat or something. Yeah, it'd be easier for them. It would be easier for them to run roughshod over an Obama who doesn't know how to negotiate because they never had a private position. They were never in a corporate boardroom. They don't like dealing with Trump, although they do respect him, I think, to some degree. But yeah, Trump's approval is now at 45. That's highly significant. This is the aggregate. This is including several polling firms that normally show Trump significantly below what he's at. It could be 46, 47. Now, can it possibly be statistical noise? This has happened before on the other end. You remember his aggregated approval drops 3 or 4 points, and everyone's like, oh my God, Trump is not long for the political world now. And it was bullshit because you just had several polling firms come out that typically undercut his approval, and they happen to have coincided in a short span of time. You have a CNN poll, I think it's a Marist or some of these, a Harris poll. But these ones, like Gallup, has typically underestimated his support, and they're still showing him at, I think, 44. So this is pretty close to the mark. I would say it's probably not statistical noise. I think there's been an organic incline in his support because the Democrats right now, all of their candidates either don't have a platform or their platform is very far left. Biden is the only one that stands out. And look, I'm trying to tell the Democrats, I'm going to do you a solid here. Biden can't win this election. He is a geriatric old white male who is running on Obama nostalgia. That's it. That's the only thing he's got going for him. He's not capable of beating Donald Trump. And think, he's one of the more viable candidates that you're fielding. Sanders can't beat Trump. Guaranteed. Harris can't beat Trump. Warren can't beat Trump. Your front runners are a bunch of losers. You have to go all the way down to the bottom quarter in order to find a few people that could probably... Julian Castro, for all of his far leftism, yeah, he could probably pull it off. Because he does look like an Obama to me. He's young, well-spoken, sort of from that activist, educated background, limited overall political experience. He looks good for the cameras. He's good at speaking. He's probably good at debating. Gillibrand, if she hadn't glommed onto far leftism, could probably pull it off. She's probably not viable anymore. Gabbard might be able to do it, but I mean, she's so young. At that point, when you're under 40... I don't know, some people might sort of look askance to it, I think. Even though Gabbard is the most sane of them, for the most part. I don't think that she could do it either, but she'd do better overall. She's military service. She sort of, again, she looks good for the cameras. Yeah, it'd be cool to have Surfing USA, the president, but, whatever. Overall, though, I'm not surprised that Trump's approval would be topping out above 45. I'm not surprised he'd be getting more popular. Look at who he's being compared to. He's being compared to socialist dude who wants to double everyone's taxes, and old, boring, geriatric, dynastic dude whose only claim to fame is that he was in the White House under Obama, and he was the gaffe master fucking court jester who helped take heat off of Obama by saying stupid shit and distracting people by, cracking jokes and being too personal. Too interpersonal, scrunching people's shoulders, sniffing their hair and weird shit like that. Guaranteed that would be a problem during the campaign too. I'm not surprised that Trump's approval is rising. And I think it is organically rising. I don't think this is statistical noise. Now, it's likely to recede back to the long-term, sort of 44-ish area. But it could rise. It could create a new paradigm where he hits 46, 47% and gets reelected. That gives him the re-election right there. In fact, his support, I correctly predicted that his approval needed to be around 45 in order for the Republicans to have a chance of retaining the House. He wasn't at that. They lost the House, although they gained steam in the Senate. In the next election, he would like to go into it at 48. He may not achieve that, but it doesn't really matter. In an election like that where his opponent is likely to be very, very weak, he could probably pull it off with 46. Yeah. And it'll get closer to that mark. He might be at 50 on election day, and I'll tell you why. the more he gets a chance to debate, to attack a Democratic opponent instead of a party, which is an ideologically free party at this point, but an actual other person, once he's being compared to another person who has their own foibles, their own gaffes, their own scandals, their own problems, alienates sections of the electorate that are wedge issue voters and stuff, once that happens, his approval will rise. He'll be compared to a person instead of a party. Right now he's being compared to 23 different people. Technically 24. A lot of these lists leave Mike Gravel off. I wonder why they don't want him exposed. They don't want him at the debates. Oh my God. If Gravel breaks 2 or 3%, ends up in the Democratic debate, he'll mess up their entire party. You should be definitely supporting Gravel. If you get contacted by a poll, say you're a Democrat and you support Mike Gravel for president, you should do that as a form of activism. Every goddamn single one of you. Even if you're not an American, like if they call you accidentally, oh, ja, I am American, or it'd be funny. You should do that. It's not election fraud, it's just primary related. The parties are corporations, so it's okay. That's about all. Peace out.